Yep.
Okay.
We just have to do this for the camera, these first few questions.
Okay.
Alright. What is your last name? Spell it.
Last name is Jenkins, Jenkins.
First name and middle initial.
James F.
What year were you born?
December 6th, 1948.
Where did you live before you became part of the military?
I lived at Osborne, Missouri.
You want me to go? What branch of service were you a part of?
I was the Air Force.
All right. How did you get into the service? Like, did you volunteer or were you drafted? Or
Okay. The Vietnam War was going on, and I got word that a neighbor in Minnesota had gotten killed over in Vietnam. I was still in college, so I didn't have to go. I could have my 2S deferment. But I decided that I wanted to get it over with because I didn't see the end of the Vietnam War. So I tried to get in the reserves and the Guard, but I was too old already. I was 20 years old and I was too old. So I decided that the Air Force was the best mix for me. And so I went down and I enlisted. And I was in basically 4 years active, 2 years inactive, 6 years.
okay. So what year was your first year of service?
I signed into the delayed enlistment program in '69, the fall of '69, and I became active duty in March of 1970.
All right.
Alright. Where was basic?
Basic training was Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas.
Where were you sent after basic for advanced training?
I went to Shepherd Air Force Base at Wichita Falls, Texas for Titan II missile training as a missile maintenance technician.
Alright. What was your job when you began military service?
After I got out of tech school, I got sent, well, we had a choice of bases, and McConnell Air Force Base being Wichita, Kansas was only 3-hour drive to home, so I figured that was a close place to go, so I volunteered to go to McConnell, and I got it. What I did the first part of being stationed there, I worked in the missile maintenance technician branch. I was actually go out and inspect missiles and check for leaks and anything like that. That was my first job.
Alright. Where did you begin? You said you were in Kansas after
Right.
training, or advanced training. Alright, what was happening in the world whenever you were in the military?
Well, the Vietnam War was still going on. The lottery system, I think, was still going on. Oh, I forgot about that. One of the reasons why I enlisted, the lottery system came out, and I was number 10. And I was in a small county, so I definitely knew I was going to get drafted because you kept that number all the way through college if you had stayed in college. So that was the other reason why I decided I better enlist, because being number 10. Now, going back to your question, what was the question again, please?
What was happening in the world?
Okay, during the time I was in, the Vietnam War was a big thing, but why I was stationed at McConnell, Egypt and Israel kind of had like a 6-day war or whatever, and we had to go full alert with the nuclear missiles in case something was going to happen. And Nixon was president for part of it, and that's about it.
Alright, how long did you serve?
I served actively for 4 years and 2 years inactive.
All right. Why did you decide to leave the military?
It just wasn't, I had several people try to talk me into staying, but I just couldn't see staying in the service. It just wasn't what I wanted. Plus I got engaged in the last 6 months of being, for my term, and so I just wanted to get out,
Let's see. So when you served during the Vietnam War, what engagements can you remember?
Well, since I actually didn't go to Vietnam, the only engagement, like I said, was in the missile system. we didn't want to go into engagements. We didn't want to launch a nuclear missile. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here talking today. But basically, when Egypt, I believe it was Egypt and Israel, had their little flare-up, we did go on full alert. I mean, we had to get any missile that was off alert, we had to get it back on alert, ready to launch. And at that time, I was working what they call job control, and job control was open 24 hours a day. So we had to, work right there all the time.
So did you ever how long was one shift, single shift? that you had to work?
In job control, our shifts were 12-hour shifts, 3 days on and 3 days off. Beautiful job.
What do you remember most about your
You're
time
gonna
in
edit
service?
the tape, right?
Did you hear that question?
No.
What do you remember most about your time in service?
It was, it was interesting to see, work with the missile system and everything, but, the interesting thing about the service, wasn't much pay, but, I had a good time. It was just like a 8 to 5 job, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of enjoyed that. I enjoyed work, the guys in the barracks, we had a lot of fun together and, did things and, got to meet people from all over the United States. So that was kind of nice.
What qualities did you believe you carried from the military to where you are today?
I think work habits, knowing how to take a order from somebody, like from your boss, and maybe you don't agree with it, but you do it anyway because you've been trained to do it. And that's the biggest thing I think I took out of the military, was just in getting along with people. So we had people from all over the United States. We had different beliefs, different colors, religion. I remember having a big debate one time about religion in the day room. But it's just a lot of different things that you learn working with other people.
Mm-hmm. What is the biggest memory from your time in service?
Biggest time. That's a good one. I just basically, whenever a missile came off of or came down because of a problem, what we had to do was, call SAC headquarters and tell them that we had a missile off a line, and the part that I really liked, basically, they called us sergeants back in those days, but now they're called airmen first class. They changed,
Mm-hmm.
But just with those 3 stripes, when I talked to a lieutenant colonel, he believed me over a major.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in contact with the people you served with?
I have one close buddy, John Pelotti. We went through basic training together. We went through tech school together, except he had a different function than mine. His was a more of a electrician, going to be learning to be on the launch. See, there's 4 guys that work in the launch control. They're there for 24-hour shifts, and he was supposed to be learning to be able to work with that crew. And so we both went to the same tech school, and then we both got permanent party at Wichita, Kansas. So we stayed together for the full 4 years, which is really weird, different in the Air Force. And so John Pelotti lives up at Lake City, Minnesota, and he was in my wedding, and I went up to for his wedding, and we still try and see each other probably once or twice, once every 3-4 years we try to get together.
So what did you eat? What did they have for you?
Oh, we ate good in the Air Force.
Really?
Yeah, the chow hall, you go through there for breakfast, you could have the eggs any way you wanted them. Omelets, you could have pancakes. Now, as I got my sergeant stripe, I could go to the NCO club, and so I gave up my free food at the chow hall, and I got extra per diem to go, buy my food. So I went to but basically, we had to be to work at 5:30 in the morning. So I really didn't eat breakfast that much, but it was very good food. We had, the food was very good. That's one thing about the Air Force. Now, in basic training, you went through the line and you took whatever they threw in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Was it good food?
It was good.
Really?
Yeah. But now when I was in one time I had to, in basic training, I had to pull KP. Our flight did it twice. I got out of it the first time because I was what they call a squad leader. I had like 10 guys in my squad. And so the squad leaders, we didn't have to go pull KP, but they made us GI the barracks. In other words, we had to wax the floors and do all that. But the Jello that the Air Force made, you could take the Jello and throw it against the wall and play catch with it. It never disintegrated.
What the heck?
And that John Floyd told me to stay with him. So we worked in the Clipper, and you know, food came in and we had to wash dishes and do stuff like that. And then when we got done with our job, I remember John Peloti and I cracking about 30 dozen eggs. We cracked them into a little bowl, which then spilled into a bigger bowl, which we dumped on the floor, and they wheeled that all into the refrigerator for the next time. And then peeling potatoes was funny too, but the food was very good. I can't argue with the Air Force food.
So, which did you wear, like?
This one, I don't have any dress uniforms. I was, when I got out, I gave away all my dress uniforms to one of the guys that I worked with, that he was gonna stay in a little bit longer. But this is the first uniform I started wearing. It was a white set of coveralls, and that's a metal badge, so I didn't have that on this uniform. I had that on my dress uniforms. I did keep my badge. But the reason why it had to be white, and the military took care of cleaning them and everything for us. And when you go out on the missile, you wear white because if you have grease on your uniform, you know, like say you picked up grease somewhere out of a pickup or whatever, and you get out in that missile silo and there's a leak from the oxidizer, it'll be an explosion off your pants. And they used to show the students at Shepherd what asphalt and oxidizer do. They had an object that they would drop down this pole, and they'd pour the oxidizer on that asphalt, and they would drop that. It would shoot that thing right straight up in the air like a, you know, shotgun. But one day they hit a helicopter, so they had to quit doing it.
So what did you do for fun?
What did I do for fun?
Like when you weren't working?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh.
You're gonna ask that question? Well, there isn't a whole lot to do. I mean, I was stationed in Wichita, Kansas. Back then, everything was private clubs. So to go to a private club, to go dancing or whatever, I mean, and basically being Air Force guys, our hair was short. And back then, hair was long, you know, for even guys, okay?
Really?
Yeah, so you'd walk into a, you know, Western swinger or whatever dance place, and, you know, we were dead giveaways. You know, our hair had to be just so. And, but we, you know, go dancing, and of course the biggest thing we ever did was we drank a lot. Now, on my 3 days off, I would go home, because I lived so close to McConnell. I'd go home and work with my dad on the farm, you know. And sometimes I had troubles getting home, but I got it, you know. And
So did you have a car with you?
yes, my dad helped me buy the, you know, I already had a car when I went into service, but it wasn't paid off yet. And so while I was in there, I was only getting $100 a month, because I'd given my dad part of it to make the car payment and everything. And so, you know, it was, well, you know, sometimes, well, true, things were cheap too. Gas was 23 cents a gallon. You know, cigarettes were, you know, like maybe 10 cents a pack or something on base. So you know, and so I had learned how to drive home to where I didn't have to spend much money on the way home, because the turnpike out in Kansas, right there at Wichita. So I didn't use the turnpike hardly at all. And,
So were things like cheaper to buy on base?
oh yes, definitely, yeah. But now, you know, the fun activities, like basically when you went into Wichita to go party, you had to pay a membership fee to join the club. Then you had to buy a liquor card, and that usually was a minimum of $5. And then you had to buy the setup. So, and I don't know how many liquor cards I left in Wichita when I moved out, but there probably was one or two, you know.
So did you live in like?
I lived in the barracks.
Okay.
Basically, we had, at McConnell, the first set of barracks I had in the maintenance section was, basically it was well, it was a 4-man room, but they only had 2 of us living in there. And we had our own sink and mirror inside of our and then we shared the shower and the bathroom with the other room next door. So we had to go down the hallway to a community shower. But then when I got moved up to job control, that became administrative, and I had to move out, well, I had to move downstairs, and then finally they came up, they had a new barracks, and they moved us all into the new barracks, which we had to go down the hall then to a community shower and everything like that. But it was still only a two-man room, so you only had two guys in the same room. It wasn't a big, wide open, barracks like you see in World War II.
So did you guys, like the Air Force and Airmen, did they interact with the Navy and other military?
I think it was more with at tech school, we had an Army training group in the middle, of all of our barracks. Now in tech school, our barracks were wide open in training. But then when I moved up to class deal, it was like 2-3 men rooms, so it's pretty nice in the Air Force on how they took care of us. I mean, in basic training, I believe this was our day room, but we just had single beds right in a row. And since I was a squad leader, I lived up, was in the front. I also, in tech school, I was what they call a barracks chief. I wore a gold rope, and then of course in the regular service, I worked my way up to job control, so in a way I monitored maintenance on 9 missile sites, and at night I monitored on 18 missile sites. So you still were kind of a leader on it. So it did teach me to kind of lead, so. Anything else?
Yeah, I want to know, basic training, how early did you have to wake up and what time did you get to
The
bed?
first, we got into, when they flew us from Kansas City down to Lackland Air Force Base, and then they got us transported over there, and it was late at night. So they just said, find an empty bunk and flip in. And when the TI came in the first day, I guess I didn't hear him screaming, and all of a sudden I was laying on the floor. He flipped my bed out. I would say we got up probably around 5:30 in the morning at least. And basically we were pretty much done with all of our training by supper time.
Okay.
And we were in what they call 1,000-man dorms. It was a fancy dorm. We were on the 3rd floor, but it was nice.
In this picture, you said you had to wear this
It's called a Refco suit.
suit,
Yeah, it's a set. There's a breathing apparatus that you wear on the backside. It's all self-contained. Yeah, we're recording. I can't see what I want to do. If you did something you didn't want to do, you just kept re-smelling it over and over and over again. But yeah, it's a Refco suit. It's what they wear when they offloaded the oxidizer and what they call the UDMH, which was the rocket fuel. And so you had to wear that uniform. But I practiced getting into it and out of it, but I never had to wear it in actual use. So I was lucky on that. But I was trained, and they knew what size I needed and all that stuff if they assigned it out. So that was a Refco suit on that.
So since you were a squad leader, were like the people in your squad, did they have to do this?
Okay, in tech school or basic training, we didn't have. It was more like marching and calisthenics and stuff like that, and making sure everybody was followed out and got in line and everything else. So in tech school, it was more just follow me. In other words, when I marched, I set the case. There was 4 of us, 4 squad leaders, and we were the ones that led, the squad to get them done. But as far as telling anybody what to do, I had to check to make sure that their beds were made properly and that kind of stuff. Now, as a barracks chief, I was signed as a barracks chief in personnel awaiting training. So my job there was to make sure that they got to their assignments, because people awaiting training, they had to do odd jobs around the base, because the training class that they came for hadn't started yet. And so we, I had to make sure that they got out and did that. But then I had to move to a different shift to where I had to be we had to get up like 3 o'clock in the morning and march to the chow hall, and then come back, make our bunks or make our beds up, and then we had to march to our classes. And it was what they call a mass, 8 guys across. I got to march them one time. That's weird. You're standing out all by yourself and you're marching 8 guys across, probably about 20 people back. That's a big crowd. And coming back from training class, so we got out of our training classes. They started at 6 and we were done by noon. And then we came back to our squadron area and we had odd jobs to do. I had the assignment of cleaning the commander's office. I got fired from that job. But anyway, so then they put me in charge of mowing the grass. So I had to stand there in my air-conditioned barracks and tell the guys out there in Texas to mow the grass. That's pretty much the leadership that I and the other part of it was, one advantage I had over a lot of the airmen was I was older.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them were 17, 18 years old, and I was already 20, 21 years old. So that helped a little bit on that.
So how did you wake, like, did they yell, or how did they wake you up, or you wake up?
Oh, well, and at basic training, we had to have what they call a fire guard. And he had to be standing by the door, and then he had to make a walk around about every hour on the hour. And we usually had 2 of them during the night. So it was like, 6 hours. And their job was to wake us all up. And they just come down and scream. Before the TI, the training instructor got there, they did all the screaming. Now for the first week or so, the training instructor had to stay with us. So he had his own little office. Because you just you don't know how anybody's going to intermix. I mean, we came from all over. And you didn't know whether I belonged to a gang or not belonged to a gang. And so he had to be there until he figured that we all got along together instead of getting in fights and what have you. And then at tech school, basically it was my job and my roommate's job it was his job to go down. And I made the bed for him and myself, and he went down and woke everybody up. He'd go down and beat on their door. Mm-hmm. One day, I looked up and he was kind of just hanging there at the door. And during the night, somebody had taped the door, and so when he opened it, he walked right into all that tape. So we did have fun. I mean, we did have fun. But I remember John Hughes was my roommate, and we had a lot of fun with that.
So did you do a lot of pranks?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did a few pranks. Especially the worst one was when you threw your cigarette ashes into somebody's drink and he doesn't know it until he goes and takes a drink.
Oh, no.
That's the worst one.
So if you wouldn't have moved to Kansas, so you're closer to home, where else would you have gone?
The other 2 choices was Davis-Monthan down in Phoenix, Arizona, and Little Rock, Arkansas. Those were the 3 bases. There was a 4th base, which was out in California, and just slipped my mind. We had one guy out of training class that went to California, and he was from California. Mm-hmm. So the last word we had from him was when he showed up out there in California and he went into the hangar to get his assignment for the day, the sergeant looked at him and said, "You see that room over there leaning up against the building?" He says, "That's what you're going to do for the next 4 years." Because he said, "We really don't do anything out here, in California." They would do launches, but they didn't have an active missile system. And Davis-Monthan, one of our instructors had gone through Davis-Monthan in the missile system, and he talked about one of the odd jobs that he had to do was pruning palm trees. And I'm like, I don't want to prune palm trees. And maybe that was a deciding factor, but most of us did take the base close to his home. Yeah. Like, we had a guy from Pennsylvania, and a guy from Ohio, and a guy from Nebraska. And so we all picked McConnell Air Force Base, because that was the furthest one north. We had a guy from Arkansas, from out of our training class. He went to Arkansas. And I think he was from Hawaii, so he just decided that Arkansas sounded good,
I didn't know what he was going to
Because there was another guy, there was 2 of them went to Arkansas, 2 of them. One lived there and the other one was from Hawaii, and so they stayed, he wanted to stay together with him.
So were the Arkansas and the Kansas one really similar?
Oh, they're all similar. You have what they call, there's 18 missiles at both sites. They have in Kansas, we had a 2-site and a 3-site. And what was interesting, before I came over here, I was on to see if there was anything else out there on the web. And the missile site that I spent most of my time at as an assistant pad chief was Site 3-3. And they had it on the internet there, Site, 3-3, and they showed, and they called it was next to a town called Leon, but all of our missiles were around Kansas, Wichita. They were probably somewhere as far as 50 miles away. And so, we'd get into a pickup, 6 of us or whatever, and we'd drive out. But when I was a pad chief, I had a senior, or a master sergeant, Sergeant Smith was master sergeant. And since I didn't have enough rank, I couldn't be a pad chief, so I was assistant pad chief. But basically, he let me, pretty much do what I wanted to. As a pad chief, we had to go out and make sure the floors were swept up and cleaned up and everything else. All the equipment was working. And then when the maintenance crews came in, our job was to make sure that they got the job done, or what do you need to get the job done. And then we'd sit there on the phone and we'd call job control, which is where I eventually ended up at, and we'd tell them what jobs were done, and they'd mark them off, and what equipment that they still needed to get, and then they'd add that to, job control would add that to the work order, and that would go back to planning and scheduling, who would then reschedule after the equipment came in. And then also, the one part I did like is sometimes there was just one of us going out there, we got to fly out there in a helicopter. And and one day they forgot me on the way back. And so I was up, because once you get outside the missile gate, you can't get back in. You have to have a password. And so before we left McConnell, we had to go to the password place, and they'd give us a password. And you always had to use it in a sentence. And the one time the commander downstairs just started laughing because it says, my password was dumb. So, I am dumb. And he goes, yes, you are. And so, we would just, stuff like that. But once you left the gate, I could not come back in and use the same password again. So I could go back to the gate, pick up the phone, and talk to the person on the ground. And I said, sir, where's that helicopter at? Because I didn't have a vehicle. So that trip coming back, the pilot, he asked me to get into the front seat instead of back in the back. And he offered me to fly it. And I go, no. Fly a helicopter. So, there was fun times, weird times. Okay.
I was gonna say.
I don't know.
We're like Wichita, so since it was close to Wichita, were they not necessarily warned, but
Did they know they were there?
yeah.
Yes, they did. Matter of fact, every now and then, somebody would wake up and realize that they're there. And they would call the base, and the commander would go, they've been there since 1968 or whatever, 61, 68, so, where you been,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they've been out there, but some of them were, I think there was one out on the 2 side. I think we stopped for coffee and everything on the way out there, but it was 60, 70 miles out there. And then this little badge right here, we were in 1971, we were a SAC Outstanding Missile System.
So it was a special honor you
Yeah.
guys received?
In other words, we had an inspection done from this organization, and we passed with colors. So,
That's cool.
yeah, there was one time one of our missile sites did fail, and the colonel wasn't too happy, so he assigned the major as a pad chief, and put myself and my as assistant pad chief and the other pad chief. And they gave us an electrician and basically a plumber, and we became a 5-man crew, and we had to go out to this missile site every day to get it back so it would pass. So that was kind of an honor that we were that good.
How did they fail at test?
Oh, cleanliness sometimes, and things weren't running correctly or whatever. It's pretty much out on the missile, because we didn't do much in the command center. The command center had, in all these pictures, it had 3 levels, and the main level was where the crew was, and
This one?
That's the missile silo itself. Here, this would be this one. Basically, we entered, we came into a locked-in, secured, once we were in there, we were like in a jail. Then we gave our password, and then we walked down these stairs. Well, once we got password, they gave us topside security. So then I could go back, open the gate, and we could drive our pickup on the site. And then we all came down this site here. We had launch doors. We had 2 sets of launch doors going to that tunnel there. And they were probably about 18 inches thick, solid concrete. But they swung, you know, without too much effort. And then we had, you couldn't open the other one until you closed one. And then we got into this area, and then that would let us get into the command post. And there was 4 guys. See, one thing about the Titans, you had 4-man crews to every missile. Where if you've heard about the Minuteman, which was over at Whiteman Air Force Base, they had 1 crew for 11 missiles. In other words, that 1 crew could launch 11 missiles. This crew could only launch 1 missile. And then you had storage down here, like if they had to be here for a long time, they had the old K rations were stored down there. Upstairs was a sleeping area, a kitchen, and most of the crews, though, they went to the cafeteria, and they would get their lunches in a big cooler and bring them with them, because they didn't want to eat what was down here. And then we came out this long tunnel here, and we had 2 doors we had to go through, and then there's folding where the silo walls fold into the missile. So when we opened the door, we walked out on these grates, and I took my parents and Nancy, or my wife, you know, down in the missile site, and my mom, she got to here and she said, "That's enough for me. I'm not going anywhere." So my dad and my wife came out here, where she was my fiance, and she got real scared because this is a long way, and we opened the door on one level just to give them an idea, and you know, you see right through it, so you see this long drop. So that, you know, that's kind of interesting. But there is, I found out that there is a system like this. If you ever get out to Tucson, Arizona, or, you know, in that area, you can go to a museum where they have one still in the ground. But all of this has been imploded. They've destroyed everything out in Kansas. There's nothing there anymore, except the farmers are farming over the ground.
So did you ever have to like practice and like use this escape?
Nope. No.
Was it tight down there, or was it spacious?
Oh, there was a lot of room.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, okay, this is all the launch control stuff. I had a little desk sitting right next to that railing going downstairs, and that's where I sat. But as assistant pad chief. And but no, it's a big area. I mean, and when you went out here, you always carried this sensor box. And so as you opened the door, the first thing you did is you stuck that tube in there to make sure there wasn't any leaks going on. And that was the biggest scare is having. I mean, we all carried, you know, we had our hard hats on and wore our white uniforms, and we had earplugs that we had to carry with us. Because down in this missile silo, there is a locomotive engine about that size. And when it kicks on, it's real loud. But as they built this, they put that diesel engine in down here, and basically when they put the next floor on, that was it. You couldn't never get that, you know, engine out of there. But they had to run that probably about once a week to make sure that, you know, that the electricity went out, that engine would kick in and provide electricity to the whole system there.
So did you go in here much?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We had to make sure. Well, we had to make sure that there was. You've got the warhead, then you got second stage oxidizer, second stage UDMH, first stage oxidizer, first stage, and then you got the W down here, which is the blast, where the blast comes flying out. And this is it balanced on this ring, and we had to make sure that ring was level. And if it wasn't leveled, I'm not going to tell you how we leveled it. We jumped up and down on it. But basically, you know, we had an elevator going up and down here, and these springs, you know, is what held that ring in place. It's actually set on a ring. And the Titans actually launched from in the ground. The Atlas came up and launched from above ground. So that was the difference between the Atlas. And this is a liquid fuel. And you know, you think about, was there an igniter that would ignite it? No. All these two had to do was touch each other, the fuel. What they did down here in the thrusters, the gas and everything would just circle around until they finally got to where they touched each other. And the minute they touched each other, there was no stopping it. And they did have one accident in Little Rock, and somebody dropped, I think there was a movie on it, but somebody did actually drop a socket and punctured the tank. And the missile did blow up inside in there. Several people got killed on that one. And the other thing that we had to do is there's some levels on here that the floor does not come down all the way around. It only comes down half around. So you had to go out there and put this chain in place. But you had to wear a rope. And you had to hook the rope outside as you went in, and then you had to hook it again on the inside because somebody had jumped off of one of the levels. And so we had to start doing those ropes. And down here on the thruster side, we had to bend over and reach down and pull out part of the floor. And that's the only time you almost wanted to go, you know, down in the W, which is another 30, 40 foot drop. But that gives you a rough idea of what it was like. There's pictures in here that shows what it looks like launching. And here's the breakdown of what the missile would look like. Here's your different stages. Here's what an engine looks like. There's another picture of an engine. The only thing I didn't work on was a guidance system. We had a set of guys that did the guidance system. And in the missile silo, there was a mirror that worked between the sky and the guidance system. And the mirror was set to the North Star, because we figured that nobody could blow up the North Star. And then when we had to, they had to go on alert sometimes. This talks about all the missile stuff and see different systems. There's another picture of okay, this is colored, but this is what it looks like coming out of the hole. You got all that coming out of the W. Here's another one that's different colored. Here's what the control center looked like they wore blue uniforms. And they were there too also to be a partner, because you could not go out into the missile without a partner. You always had to have two of you. And when I brought my family down there, I knew one of the crew members, so I went to his missile site. And so we went out together, and there's what the warhead looks like. So it gives you a rough idea of it. But all this stuff is on the internet. It's amazing what's out there. And you know, and basically it was a secret job. I wasn't top secret, but I was secret. So I had to get a secret clearance to do this job. And they come back home and they interview whoever you say they interview. About that, there you go. Next question. I'm rambling now. You guys got me rambling.
I just have, you mentioned a few times about the making the beds. Like, why is that such a big deal in the military?
Oh, it's just part of the things that have to, you have to do. You have to wear your uniform a certain way. Basically, everything had to be in a straight line, right to your belt buckle. And you had to have, one of the questions I think it asked me was decorations. Basically, I had the National Defense Service Medal. Anybody that went into service during the Vietnam War automatically got one of those. I think I had two other decorations that I would wear, but I just, because anytime being stationed at McConnell, anything that happened there, any decorations that they earned, technically you can wear them. But I just wore what I had to. And now this is the khaki uniform. They came out with one where it's dark blue pants with a light blue shirt. And you could get a long sleeve or a short sleeve. And then we had a dark blue jacket with our stripes on it. And we would, because, you know, McConnell Air Force, Wichita, Kansas is not that cold. I mean, we had a big blizzard one time, but, so we didn't wear our big heavy wool blues. But then the orders came down saying, yes, you will, you know, wear them. But I gave, like, all those nice uniforms I gave away. I don't even have any khaki.
So did you have to buy those?
Basically, in basic training, for 6 weeks, you earned $100. So where did the rest of the money go for 6 weeks worth of work? It went into your uniforms. And matter of fact, the first check that they gave us, they marched us to the commissary, and they told us what to buy. And we had like $1 left over. You know, sandals and soap and all that stuff. So.
Do you have any more questions?
Have I bored you, no?
No, I thought it was interesting. So,
And I can turn that off.